Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to be getting started in just about 1 minute, talking this evening about trekking Mount Toubkal with our special guest Graham. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited to have a special guest here with us this evening. Hi there, Graham. Nice to see you.
Hi.
So this evening we're going to be talking about a really great mountain, a challenge which is very, very popular. We're really excited about doing next year, and Graham is going to be leading the tour for us as well. So he's going to be there joining the team out in Morocco. We'll be climbing Mount Toubkal. So without further ado, let's get started, and we're going to run you through the itinerary. We're going to go through what to expect and what the experience is like. If you've got any questions, then please pop them down there in the comments and we'll be really happy to answer those for you. So hopefully I'm going to be able to share my screen. Let's see if we can do that. This is always the fun bit, seeing if the technology is going to work. Hopefully you guys can see that.
Yep.
Is that now full screen as well?
Perfect.
Excellent. I love it when things go to plan. Hi there to Ian and David who've joined us on Facebook. Do say hello when you come and join us. We'll give you a shout out as you join. So let's get straight into it. First of all, Graham, are you looking forward to heading out to Morocco and climbing Mount Toubkal next year?
Yeah, of course. Had the pleasure of going there twice last year, and yeah, there are many things I'm looking forward to going back experiencing, and looking forward to doing a slightly different trek from the ones that we did last year.
Mm, definitely. And Sarah, I mean, you've been to Morocco countless times, haven't you? It's a great destination, isn't it?
Absolutely. I always love going back to Morocco. It's just such an amazing destination. I always think it's effectively so close to home, but yet you feel like you're in another world when you get there. Just all the sort of sights, sounds, smells. You really know you're on another continent, but yet
Mm,
it's only a 3.5 hour flight away. I love that about it.
I
That's
completely
great for
agree.
a long weekend like this trek, basically.
That's it, absolutely. It really is. It's a very kind of compact adventure and lots of kind of fun and a really, really meaty challenge as well by climbing the highest peak in North Africa. So let's get straight into it and talk about the itinerary. So before we start, I'm just going to ask you, Sarah, to reassure people that might be watching about our sort of stance on coronavirus and the situation if the trip was not able to happen due to COVID-19. Do you want to say a few things about that?
Sure. So obviously we're all feeling sort of fairly hopeful and positive now with news of the vaccine and everything else that by sort of next summer, hopefully, fingers crossed, the world will be a safer and a more normal place and we will be able to go ahead and start travelling again. However, if not, and we do appreciate that people might have those concerns, we would have to cancel the trip. We've obviously had to cancel all of the trips we were planning for this year. And if we were in a position that either Morocco as a destination was unsafe, still had high incidences of COVID, or we still had it here in the UK, like at present, we're obviously not allowed to travel overseas. If that was the situation, the trip would be cancelled or postponed, and you would get all your money back. Basically, we're never going to run a trip if it's in any way unsafe or to do so. So we would be making that call a few months in advance. We would either postpone it and offer you a new set of dates, and if you can't make the new dates, you would then get a refund anyway. So it's really just to reassure you that if you do sign up for this or any one of our other trips, then please don't worry about that. We will only be going ahead, and you will only end up paying if the trip does go ahead safely.
Absolutely, yeah. And like Sarah says, we're keeping our fingers firmly crossed that things will be much better by next year. So it's going to be 10th of June, all being well, 10th of June next year. Um, we will be offering two options for flights across. So either you can fly from London Luton or you can fly from Manchester. So if you are based in the north or the west or the south, we've made it kind of more flexible for you to join us from wherever you're located. So you'll fly across to Marrakesh, and it's a very short flight, like Sarah mentioned, just about over 3 hours, 3.5 hours. And once you arrive, you will gather together with your team members. So those from London will gather with those coming from Manchester, and you'll meet your local guide who will be supporting you throughout the adventure. And from there, you will transfer from Marrakesh Airport to a small village called Imlil in the Atlas Mountains. And it's a really, really beautiful drive. You can see from the photographs, you go through these wonderful lush green valleys, passing these small traditional villages, really, really stunning scenery. It's quite a winding kind of journey along the way, so if you do kind of have any problems with motion sickness, do bear that in mind. But it is only an hour and a half, so it's not a problem to kind of sit through that. And like I say, the scenery is so beautiful that it takes your mind off things. So once you arrive in Imnil, you'll have an opportunity to settle in, and let me just, there we go, settle into your guest house, which is a locally owned guest house there in the town. And the rest of the day you've got at leisure, so you can maybe do some souvenir shopping if you want to, have a nice cup of Moroccan coffee, just soak in the atmosphere of this lovely village, or maybe just prepare your trekking kit for the next days to come. Now, later in the evening, what we'll do is we'll have a kind of trek briefing. So our guide will talk to us about what to expect and the kind of things that you need to know for the coming days, and get you all prepared and ready. And you'll have a very kind of hearty dinner together before heading off to bed. Now, Graham, you said you've been to Morocco a number of times. Tell me a little bit about the food.
Well, they always say in the desert, food always tastes better, but it genuinely is really nice up there, freshly prepared vegetables and fruit, etc. And um, yeah, you get a lot of the I've forgotten the name of them now. The lamb
Oh,
comes in the,
tagine.
yeah, tagine. Yeah, the lamb tagine. We
Mm.
were actually saying that I've actually gone vegan recently, so I won't be enjoying that next time I go out. But for anyone that does like lamb is still eating it, the lamb tagine is really good up there.
Mm. And the vegetable, I mean, there's of course, we accommodate all sorts of dietary requirements. So even if you can't have lamb tagine, a vegetable tagine will be prepared for you. So you won't be missing out. You'll still get to experience that kind of genuine Moroccan flavour. Sarah, any thoughts on the food? Have you got any kind of highlights of Moroccan food?
Oh, it's just always really delicious, and always also so beautifully presented. That's what strikes in or sticks in my memory. It's like I said, you'll be in the middle of the desert or halfway up a mountain, and they'll come up with this beautiful array of food that just looks like it's sort of in a five-star hotel. They just seem to have this knack of making it look beautiful, and it does actually taste delicious. It's
Mm.
I think it's actually a fairly good place to be vegetarian. They're very, very good at catering for vegetarian or vegan diets. So if you
Mm.
do have anything like that, it's really not a problem. Just don't worry about it. You'll be well looked after.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's always plenty. You will not be going hungry, that's for sure. So after you've spent your first night in Imlil, the altitude there is 1,740 meters. So I'll just quickly touch on kind of what the altitude situation is for this trip. So I mentioned at the beginning that this is the highest peak in North Africa, not the highest peak in all of Africa. That's Kilimanjaro, which we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. If you want to review our previous Facebook Live, the maximum altitude, the summit of Mount Toubkal is 4,167 meters, and you will progress from Imlil at 1,740 meters to camp, which is 3,200 metres approximately, and then up to the summit from there, and then back down again the same way that you've come. So it seems like a fairly rapid ascent, but actually, you're under that kind of threshold of high altitude for the majority of the trip. And then when you do head up to the summit, it's quite a kind of rapid head up to the summit and then come back down quickly. So in terms of altitude sickness and symptoms and things, it's possible that on the summit push you might feel some of the common symptoms, a mild headache, a little bit more breathless than normal, perhaps a little bit of nausea or fatigue. I mean, climbing a mountain is quite fatigue inducing in general anyway, but you're not to worry about those kind of things, and it doesn't happen to everyone. Um, you can't train for preparing for the altitude, but you can train for fitness. We'll talk about that a little bit later on this evening. But in a nutshell, the altitude there is generally kind of fairly moderate, and then reaches a high altitude stage towards the end to the summit. So let's continue on and talk about accommodation. So I mentioned at the beginning that you stay there in Imlil in a guest house. When you're actually trekking, you'd be staying in a tent. So three-man tent, nice and spacious, two people per tent. You'll need to bring your own sleeping bag with you, but a sleeping mattress is provided, and of course the tents are provided for you as well. In Imlil, of course, you stay in the guest house, and when you are returning to Marrakesh at the end of the trip, you stay in a hotel there, a locally owned hotel. All of your meals are provided throughout the trip. When you're there in the cities in Imlil and in Marrakesh, it'll either be at the accommodation or at a local restaurant. And whilst you're on the mountain, like we mentioned before, you'll have freshly cooked meals provided for you throughout the trip. Now, you've both trekked in the Sahara, so have a kind of an understanding of what the camping is like. What would you say about those mattresses that are provided? They're pretty comfortable, aren't they?
They really are actually. Yeah, I've had some of my best night's sleep camping, I think, on those Moroccan mattresses. They're very quite thick, aren't they? And quite well padded. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. And Graham, what about kind of the night sky and that feeling of being out in the wilderness? What's that like when you're camping in Morocco?
Well, I think one of the things I noticed in particular was just the clarity of the night sky. So when you're looking up, I've never seen as many stars as when I've been in the desert. And going back to the mattress thing as well, I'm quite low maintenance with mattresses, so I could lay on a sheet of paper and I'll probably be fine. But I've had some really good night's sleep. When I was out in the desert, it really was pleasant to sleep out there.
Mm, I completely agree. There's something really nice about being in the wilderness and kind of getting away from it all. Now, one of the things that is definitely a commonly asked question is about maintaining personal hygiene and about toilet facilities. So we'll quickly just go through that. So essentially, there are no shower facilities at the campsite, with the exception of a possibility that you might be able to use the showers at the refuge, which is nearby, which you'd need to pay for. Of course, at the hotels and the guest houses, there are shower facilities and flushing toilets, so you don't need to worry about that. We recommend baby wipes is a good way of keeping your on top of your personal hygiene. As you can see from that photograph there, that is a baby wipe that I used to wipe off some of the dirt. You can see my handprint in that baby wipe there from where I've rinsed the the dust off my skin. It is a very, very dusty area in the Atlas Mountains there, so it's definitely worth having a small pack of baby wipes with you. Of course, regarding toilets, like I said, at the accommodation there will be flushing toilets, Western sit-down style toilets. However, the campsite's a bit more basic, and you've got kind of a squat toilet dug hole into the ground with a privacy tent around it to give you some comfort at the campsite. There are also, of course, toilets at the refuge, but again, you need to pay to use those since we're not staying there. And just to point out as well, the reason that we're staying in the campsite is just so remote. I'll just skip back and show you those pictures. You are essentially, you've got the mountains to yourself, and it's something really wonderful about having all of that space around you, just your team there and enjoying the peace and quiet. Of course, if your teammates snore best. So back to the itinerary. After a good breakfast, after a good night's sleep and a good breakfast in Imnil, you'll start the trek up to your camp for the night. So breakfast typically is kind of breads and jams and hot drinks and sort of fresh fruit and things like that. So a really nice hearty breakfast to set you off for the day. Now, one of the things that's really important to mention at this point is about luggage. So, all you need to carry with you during the trekking is just a day pack that you'll have with your own bits and pieces that you'll need for access for during the day. Now, Sarah, do you want to tell us a little bit about our kind of views on animal welfare and why it's so important to us that the animals that we use, pack animals, are well cared for?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's something we are really passionate about, and right from sort of day one, it's something we do feel very strongly about. We just need to, well, we do make sure that the animals we use, whether it's in Morocco or elsewhere on any of our treks, are well looked after, well cared for, and they are not in any way overloaded. It means we actually have to give our trekkers very strict restrictions in terms of how much luggage they are allowed to take. Um, I think on this trick it's 8 kilograms, isn't it? As we said, as
Yeah,
a maximum amount. And we really do have to enforce that very, very strictly because we just need to make sure that these animals are not going to be overloaded. They are taken care of. We know that they're going to get a healthy diet, they're going to be well cared for, and they're given adequate rest days before they go off and do another trek. So it's just something that we, as I'm sure you, will feel very passionate about.
absolutely. I don't know about you, Sarah, but I love having animals around me. I'm a big animal lover myself, so it's actually quite nice to see them when they're unloaded, just kind of wandering around the camp. Super. So, onto the itinerary again. It's a very, very long, slow walk through the valley. So, you start off as you come out of Imnil, you go up a pretty steep hill. And once you exit the village, you end up in this really, really stunning valley with greenery all around you, rocky mountains in the distance. It's really beautiful. And from there, you traverse this very kind of open, flat plain with lots of rubble and small stones and scree and things. And you cross over that until you reach the base of the trail. And from there, it is a slow, zigzagging uphill trail. It's that kind of trail where it doesn't really feel very steep, but you know that your heart is pumping and your lungs are working. So it's quite strenuous. It's hot as well, so the weather conditions in June are pretty warm, so the temperatures could reach kind of up to about 30 degrees during the day in the midday. So taking it really gently and slowly, making sure you keep hydrated is really important. But I mean, the scenery is just stunning, as you can see from this picture. It really is wonderful. Now, halfway through the first trek day, you come past a really interesting site. It's an Islamic shrine and a mosque called Sidi Chamharush, which is at an altitude of 2,350 meters. And it's very, very kind of spiritual place for Muslim pilgrims to go to, where it's believed that those that visit will be healed of mental health ailments, it will solve problems, bring good luck. I think there's some fertility kind of things as well there for women that are unable to conceive. So a really, really spiritual place for Muslims to visit. So you kind of go past that and you can see the picture there of the shrine. And as you continue past there, you know that it's almost time for lunch. You'll stop and you'll find some small shops selling some drinks and refreshments and things, and you'll stop there and have a hearty lunch before continuing to kind of rest through the heat of the day. There's some really great souvenirs to be had on this trek, but don't get loaded down because of course you'll be carrying it yourself since the mules will be loaded up to the max anyway. So after you've had your lunch and had a good sit down and enjoyed the scenery, you continue slowly up to camp. You can see from the pictures here that the kind of terrain is very, very dramatic. All around you, you're surrounded by 3,000-meter peaks. Some of the time there's snow still on the mountains, which is really, really beautiful. It kind of adds something to the environment. You know, there's hardly anyone around on the trail. It's really, really remote and beautiful. So you kind of feel like you've got the place to yourself. And you finally reach camp, and you can see there the picture there with the tents. You get yourself settled in for the night and enjoy your time there. So you have 2 nights at the campsite, from which you will then go up to the summit. And like I mentioned earlier when we were talking about camping, the remoteness of it, you can see here how remote it is and how beautiful. In fact, one of the mules is in the background of the picture there, you can see. And it's just such a spectacular place to go to sleep, surrounded by natural beauty. And of course, the food, as we mentioned, so you have a really lovely meal that evening in your campsite, freshly made for you. You can see here it's just really, really nice and special. Sitting around in the mess tent together, sharing a meal and a nice cup of mint tea. Um, Graham, are you a fan of mint tea?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much any type of tea, mint tea. Yeah,
It's very, very delicious, isn't it? Sweet and full of, flavour. Really, really great way to end a meal. So the next day is the big day. You will wake up bright and early in the morning. You will head up to the summit of Mount Toubkal at 4,167 meters. It is a very, very early start, like I say, so pre-dawn start. You'll have your head torches on. You'll be kind of trekking out in the dark. It's that kind of, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, before you head up to a summit or the final day of a trek, you get that kind of butterflies kind of feeling before you leave your tent in the morning, that kind of feeling of exhilaration and sort of terror as well. Is that relatable, Sarah?
Absolutely. And I think there's just something special about getting up before dark, isn't there? And just setting off with your head torches on. And yeah, I know what you mean. It sort of adds to that sense of exhilaration and excitement, I think.
Mm, definitely. So off you go, the sun is rising behind you, you've got your head torches on, and you continue up the mountain. So, again, it's a very, very similar kind of terrain that you've been experiencing the previous day. Very dry, very rocky, lots of scree at this point, so it's quite challenging to walk on. As you put one foot forwards, it slides back kind of half a step, so it's really challenging. You have to kind of keep that mental focus and that determination to make it up to the top. And it's a kind of winding, zigzagging path, and there's lots of really, really big boulders. You can see here from the picture lots of kind of broken stone that's from years of the mountain kind of changing throughout the years. Really, really stunning scenery. And as you progress, it kind of feels like you're walking into a big bowl. That's the only way I can describe it. The mountains kind of, it feels like the sides of the mountains suddenly come up around you, and it's quite enclosed, although there's lots and lots of space. It's not, claustrophobic. And it just, yeah, as I say, it feels like you're climbing out of a huge bowl. And it can be very, very hot, especially as the sun comes in over the top of the mountain and kind of radiates between those walls. At one point, I kind of thought to myself, it feels like I'm in a frying pan because you're kind of in this bowl like thing with the sun shining around. So it's a pretty sweaty trek, but just taking it slowly, making sure that you're well hydrated and you can manage the heat nicely. Now, even though it's very sunny and very hot, like I mentioned before, it could be up to 30 degrees, it's not actually that unusual to see some snow on the ground, even in the summertime. So you can see in the picture there at the bottom, there are some patches of snow. So it's a possibility that you might be crossing snow along the way. And that's a very, very strange thing to experience when, the ambient temperature is, in the high 20s or 30s, and beneath you is snow and frozen and ice. So it's a very, very strange contrast, but that's something that just adds something to the experience, makes it really special. Now, once you kind of reach the edge of this bowl, as I've called it, you reach kind of the top there, almost like a plateau, and all of a sudden you get these amazing views that open up beneath you, and from there you can see this pyramid shaped summit signpost in the distance. You can see that in the top right hand side picture. I'll just point my mouse to it there, hopefully you can see it. And you see that summit sign, and you kind of get that feeling of renewed energy and enthusiasm that you're going to make it, and you're almost there at the top of North Africa. So it's a very, very short trek, kind of winding your way up on this scree to the summit. Just before you reach the summit, there is a small section about 2 meters which is reasonably exposed, so taking nice kind of confident firm steps without looking down is recommended. If you have any concerns about heights, then don't worry, your guides will be there to support you every way, whether that's holding your hand or walking next to you. It's no problem, they'll support you each section of the way. And finally, you are there, you are at the summit of Mount Toubkal, 4,167 metres, the highest peak in Northern Africa and the highest peak in Morocco, of course, as well. It's a really, really amazing feeling standing on that summit and just getting that kind of those views, potentially all the way to the Sahara Desert if the weather's not too bad. You can see here some of the scenery that's around you. really rocky and rugged, but you can see all the way across other sections of the Atlas Mountains, and it's really beautiful. Now, Graham, how you've experienced treks where you've kind of done a summit or reached an important point like Machu Picchu. What does it feel like when you reach that goal, that final point of the trek?
I guess for a lot of people that do take part in the treks, it's been a very long journey getting to that point. It's not just the actual trek itself;
Mm.
it's all the fundraising and any experiences that have led them to choose to go on the trek. So, what you can often find is when you get to that point, it can be quite a sort of a culmination of different feelings that will sort of peak all at the same time. And especially when you're with a lot of people that have been on different journeys to get to this exact same point as well. So it can be, yeah, quite an emotional experience for most of the people within a group usually, and just to be able to sort of go through a journey with a lot of these people. Because for me, usually my journey, I'm there in a sort of a voluntary capacity. I'm there working, helping people out, but I can also then empathise and really sort of feel people's individual journeys. And I've had some very sort of touching moments with some people on some of their treks, which is, yeah, one of the things I really appreciate about the role.
Mm. Yeah, I couldn't say it better myself. It's just a really special moment, isn't it? Just getting there and achieving what you've set out to achieve with your teammates as well. It's really wonderful. You will hopefully celebrate your achievement and see some good views, and then you'll descend back down the same trail that you came up and back to your campsite for a well-deserved meal and a rest and a good night's sleep before continuing the rest of the trek. Now, like I mentioned before, there is a refuge not too far away from the campsite, and if it's open and if you fancy it, there's often a possibility that you can pop in there and purchase a cup of coffee or hot chocolate and a chocolate bar. Other alternatives are available, um, and just enjoy kind of a celebratory hot chocolate in the mountains. And there's something very special about doing that. There's of course no obligation to do so. Sometimes it's nice just to have some quiet time and just appreciate the achievement and reflect on what you've done. So once you've settled in for the evening, then another wonderful meal will be prepared for you, and you'll settle down and go to sleep for your final night on the mountain. So I guess one of the things that you might be wondering now is how challenging is it? And it's quite hard to explain without doing it and being there, but the best we can do is kind of grade it. So we have 5 grades of challenging level, with 1 being the lowest grade and 5 being the highest. And we grade this challenging, which is about a 4. So it's pretty tough. It does require some commitment to training. It requires a decent level of fitness. The types of challenges that you're going to be facing would be, of course, camping in a really remote environment, very basic toilet facilities, little to none in terms of shower facilities, really long days of trekking, so up to sort of 8 hours of trekking per day, and a hot climate, of course, as well. Now, if you haven't done any kind of overseas treks before, then that's not a problem. We really love it when people, take the first step to enjoy, an overseas challenge. We definitely recommend though that you do some walking beforehand, preferably in the hills if you can, so you can get your body used to the kind of terrain that you'll be experiencing in the mountains. Now, of course, the views as you've seen from the photographs are pretty breathtaking, and that does take your mind off it when it's when it's tough and when it's challenging. But it's still really important to kind of get yourself prepared and take responsibility for being as fit as you can be when you arrive in Morocco. Now, Graham, you are very, very skilled and specialise in knowing what to do when it comes to fitness and training. Do you want to kind of say a few things about what you would typically do to prepare for a mountain trek like this?
Yeah, sure. So my profession is I've worked in the fitness industry for it's come up to 14, 15 years now. So that's um, where my experience lays. And some of the sort of key things that I'd recommend to most people is implementing some kind of structured training program before going. And it doesn't have to be hard training whatsoever, but just putting the homework in and doing some walking, especially with the equipment that you're going to be using on the trek. You need to break in that equipment before you go, and using that on just doing some simple walks around your hometown, or maybe traveling a little further away to get to some more challenging terrain. getting used to walking up and down hills, especially wearing boots and a rucksack. Um, and if somebody is even as going far as going to the gym to do their preparations, getting on a treadmill and putting some incline on there and doing a fair distance on the treadmill and just walking, something called a step mill, which is
Mm.
essentially just an everlasting escalator. It's really good for mountain training because it helps to build up the joints in the knees and then the quadriceps. Um, and yeah, if I'm doing any walking training, I'll always make sure I've got my rucksack on, and I'll always try and put a little bit of extra weight in there as well, just so that I'm, if anything, too prepared rather than under prepared. So that's usually maybe sort of 5 or 6 kilos in a rucksack, and that's more than enough usually. If you think you're probably taking 2 or 3 liters of water, so that's 2 or 3 kilos plus snacks and maybe any extra bits and bobs, cameras and batteries or whatever. So those are probably some of the key things. Also, another thing that cropped up earlier on is about the usage of toilets. If we are using a hole in the floor, then I think it's good to put some practice in squatting, because if you can't comfortably stay in a squatted position for a minute or two, then you're going to have to get creative. Which I know some people have had to get creative with these toilets in the past. So it does help if you can do a good squat.
That's a really, really good tip, and I think that's something that often is overlooked and forgotten about. Typically when you're thinking about using the toilet, you don't think about literally having to squat there for however long it takes. So,
Mm-hmm.
really, really good tip. Thank you so much for sharing those ideas. So, um, oh, sorry. So, continuing on with the itinerary, you will have breakfast in the morning at camp and then head back down the valley the same way that you've come to Imlil, and you'll stop for lunch there. Now, after lunch, you'll transfer back to Marrakesh, so the same journey back, about an hour and a half, to check into your hotel for the next night. And the rest of the day is entirely yours to explore this amazing city. Sarah, you've been to Marrakesh a number of times. You want to talk us through a little bit about what it's like, what you can do there, and the highlights for you?
There's just so much. It's just one of those. It's a real assault on the senses. Well, I think these photos sort of sum it up as well. You've got spices, you've got smells coming at you from all angles. You've got the souks that you can go and explore. You can get completely lost in the markets and souks. Just window shopping, even if you're not buying. It's just a fascinating place to wander around. Um, it's a beautiful city with a lot of fascinating buildings and gardens as well, depending on your interest. And actually, one thing to mention here is that some people do choose to actually stay on a bit longer at the end. There's absolutely no need for you to fly back the next day with the group. If you want to stay on and have a couple of extra nights, we can easily arrange that for you. Um, and I'd highly recommend that, to be fair, if you've got the time when you're out there, just take advantage of it. It's one of those cities that you can quite happily just spend days just absorbing the atmosphere. Um, and yeah, a lot of things to see and do, so very much depending on your interests.
Mm, absolutely. I would certainly agree. I don't think I've spent enough time in Marrakesh, and I've been there numerous times. It's so variable every time you visit. Everything's changing, and like Sarah said, there's so many different things that you can see depending on your interests. And like the gardens there. There's some kind of hidden gems where it feels like you've been transported into this kind of silent, peaceful world that you may well be missing after having spent the time on the mountain and then dropped into this hustle and bustle of the Medina. So yeah, do consider it. It is certainly an option. We can include an extra day for you accommodation, and you can enjoy some extra time there. So at the end of the itinerary, so it officially finishes on the 14th of June. So it's a very short kind of 5 day trip, or 6 days if you extend. And you'll fly home back to the UK, so either to Manchester or back to London Luton, depending on your outbound flight. So that's the itinerary basically. Um, so just a gentle plug here, just in case you are inspired and fancy joining us. We are still taking bookings on this trip. It is guaranteed to go ahead, COVID allowing. So if you're interested in joining, then you are welcome to book. The booking details are all on our website. The link is there, and it's also in the description on the video. Everything is included in the trip. You know, all your flights, your meals, etc., are all included. The cost is £995, which includes a deposit that you pay at the time of booking. Now, just a quick hint here: we've got a very special offer coming up, a Black Friday offer. So do keep an eye on that. You might want to have a look and see what you can get in way of a deal for joining the Toubkal trip. So keep your eyes peeled and on our Facebook page for that. If you've got any questions about the trek, if you are inspired, if you know anyone that wants to do the trip, then don't hesitate to send our details their way or ask us questions. We're very happy to help. And just thank you so much for joining us and listening to us today. I will stop sharing my screen and we'll just have a kind of final chat between us. Graham, having listened to that, are you excited, more excited, apprehensive? Tell me how you're feeling having listened to the presentation.
Oh, yeah, it certainly gets me more excited because I can picture it all again. It's bringing up lots of images and memories and emotions from last time, especially the Medina, getting lost in Medina and struggling to find a way out again. I think quite a number of us got lost in the Medina, and you often get misguided, so that you then go and find more stalls to potentially spend more money at, etc. I also need to do some research, but I believe there's somewhere near the Medina. I saw in a program there's a cafe where you can get a five-star breakfast for a very reasonable price. So I need to
Mm.
do more research into that. But it looked very very appetizing. But that's the kind of the extra day. But the trekking and everything, it's been obviously a long time since we've been trekking with lockdown and everything. So that's really just whetted the appetite to get back out there, get my boots on, and get hiking again.
Mm, absolutely. Sarah, any thoughts? Are you inspired
Yeah.
by the idea?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I just can't wait till we can get back out there again. And as I said, all being well, things are looking more positive, and hopefully by next summer we will be in that position to be going out there and exploring and trekking and seeing the world again, which can't wait.
Same here. So we'll wrap things up here. We're going to be doing our next Facebook Live, I think, in about 3 weeks' time, I believe. So we'll put the details on Facebook once the date is confirmed, and let you know what we're going to be talking about next time. Thank you to everybody that's joined us this evening on Facebook. Thank you, Graham, for joining us and sharing your wisdom and your experience about trekking in Morocco. And like I say, if you've got any questions, then don't hesitate to ask us. Thank you so much, everyone. See you again soon. Bye.